Hey Scrap Bosses, I'm back with another project for the Tonic design team. Today I'm using the Twirling Branches die, and of course you guys know I love Tonic products, and a lot of the projects I'm going to be showing you is going to be using a lot of the tools that they have in addition to the papers and the dies, because I think they have some of the best dies in the market. I've been using Tonic products for a long time, and so I'm so glad to share all these things with you. So I'm not only using that die, but I'm also going to use the Vintage Nuvo drops, these dry matte. I'm using the color Dusty Rose as well as Pioneer Green. They have a thin applicator that makes it very easy to be able to use them on a project. I'm also using the Nuvo Hybrid ink as well to stamp out my sentiment. I grabbed some papers from my stash that's going to be used as a panel for my card base. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to use a border die to trim out the white panel that's going to go on my card. And in the middle of that border die, I'm going to test out the positioning of this Twirling Branches die. There's so many ways that you can customize the look of your card using this die. I'm going to show you one way in this video, and I'll probably do another one of these cards because I had so much fun putting it together. Now I grabbed this blue pattern paper from my stash as well because there's little hints of blue in the pattern paper, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to back that with some double-sided tape. Now I'm going to use this blue pattern paper, run it through my die, and I'm going to use the inner parts of that die, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. So as you can see, those inner parts are going to go into the negative spaces of my white panel. So I got that double-sided tape all set on my paper, and now I'm going to run the Twirling Branches die through my Big Shot. Now you can use their dies with any of the mainline die cutting machines, and it cut perfectly, cut like butter. Alrighty, so now what I want to do is run that die yet again, this time over my stitched border that I created using my stitch die. And so those are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get my card base all ready with the pattern paper. I'm using the Funky Tape Runner from Tonic as well. The reason why I love Tonic products is because they're so well made. I've been using Tonic products for a very long time, and Tonic right now is the only design team that I'm on, and I really like that because it's not like I didn't like the other design teams, but I'm really enjoying this because I'm starting to get back to doing creative projects that I haven't done in a long time, and card making is one of them. So if you like making cards, then I think you'll like some of these videos that I'll share with you here on the YouTube channel. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm punching out the inside of that die cut, and that looks really pretty with that stitched border die. And then I'm going to position that as the top panel of my card. I'm using some Nuvo adhesive. This is by far my favorite adhesive out of all of my liquid adhesives that I have. I absolutely love this adhesive. It dries very nicely. It doesn't dry too quick where you don't have enough time to move your elements around, but it's just a high quality adhesive that I just love so much. So I'm going to go ahead and get that attached to the panel. Now what I'm doing is I'm pulling out those inner pieces of that die that I cut from that blue pattern paper. And on the back of those pieces, of course, is going to be the double-sided tape that I use, the double-sided adhesive. All I have to do then is peel off the backing off of those pieces. And I'm trying to get my nail in there so I can peel it off. And I'm peeling it off slowly because there's bits of that design that are very intricate there at the branches with the little twirls. And I want to make sure I didn't rip it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put those into the negative space there on my white card panel, and look how cool that turns out. Like, I squealed when I did this because I was so excited. This is the first time I've ever done this type of design, and I was inspired by another design team member who did a card but was more holiday inspired. Now, what if you didn't fill in those negative spaces with pattern or with paper or pattern paper? You can fill them in with your Nuvos if you want to. You can fill that in with glossy accents. You can put some adhesive, some of that double-sided adhesive on that white panel, and then you can burnish some glitter. And so that would look really pretty as well. I did test that out on another card as I was playing with the product, so it's very versatile. And what you can do with this die and with some of the products that are available with Tonic, or maybe some other products that you have in your stash. So now it's time to stamp the sentiment. I grabbed a sentiment stamp that says Happy Autumn, and that's from Hero Arts. I'm using my travel size Tim Holtz stamp platform. I'm going to grab my Nuvo Clear embossing ink, which I really like. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp with my Nuvo ink, but I noticed when I was testing out my stamp, I pulled up a little bit of my cardstock. I think there was something stuck to my stamp that I hadn't cleaned from another project, so I had to get that off. Now I'm ready to stamp. So I'm going to take my ink, I'm going to ink that up. It's a green color. I don't have the stamp in front of me. So I want to say it's like an olive green, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my stamp. I'm going to stamp that onto my white panel. I'm going to do that a few times. I'm going to clean off the stamp because what I want to do next is I want to stamp that same sentiment with that clear embossing ink. So I ran my powder tool over the bottom of that card where my stamping is. I'm going to go ahead and press down that embossing ink. And so I'm going to have clear embossing over that colored stamped image. And that's a really good way to add some texture to your stamps. Now I want to make sure I clean off that stamp really good because I don't want to contaminate my adhesive pad. Now I'm going to use some Nuvo clear embossing powder, again from Tonic, and those packaging, that little lid right there with the little gem, it's just so pretty. I'm going to go ahead and spread on that powder over my embossed title. I'm going to take my paintbrush and kind of get all the little excess bits of embossing powder off. I'm going to heat that with my heat tool, trying not to warp the card since I have it all together. And so I will go ahead and run it over and then pull it away and then run it again. Now there are some dots that are impressed here with this die, and that's for you to have a guide to put your Nuvo drops. And so what I'm doing is I'm following this little design all around the swirly little branches, the twirling branches, using the Nuvo vintage drops in Pioneer Green as well as Dusty Rose. And this is a really great way to get some texture and some extra interest onto your card. So now that's all done, and that looks so pretty. So much movement on that card. I love those twirly branches. This is probably one of my favorite dies. To learn more about this die set and also all the wonderful Tonic products, make sure you head on over to the Tonic USA website to check it out. Also, you can head over to the Victoria Marie blog, and I have some still photos of this card if you're so inspired to try it out yourself. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Victoria Marie YouTube channel. When you do, make sure you click the bell indicator. That way you'll know every time a new video is posted here on this channel. Now you go and be creative.